Welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is, well, that's a difficult thing actually. It's either politics or military affairs, but it's going to be both probably. And what I would like to do is I would like to do a summary on the current events that are happening in Europe and in Ukraine, and see where we are at this stage. I'm not going to discuss why the Russians SMO have started. I've covered it in many previous videos. Just a short background. It was Russia basically acknowledged the Donbas two republics as independent countries. They asked for assistance, military assistance. Russia gave that and started the SMO. And that's how the whole conflict in Ukraine started. It was an extension of the 2014 maiden coup in Ukraine, which was supported by the Americans, and actually not only supported but instigated. So it is not, the whole war didn't start at the beginning in February, by the end of February in this year. One has to look at it in context. As I've stated also, Russia did invade Ukraine, technically, and occupied the Kherson region and Zaporizhzhia, and they created, from Crimea, and they created the land bridge to the Donbas. Now, that was not to support the Donbas publics, but it was for their own benefit, in order to secure the water supply and electricity supply to the Crimean Peninsula. Now, we also should be aware that Russia has conquered all of Lugansk and a partial, well, not everything from Donetsk and not everything from Kherson Oblast, neither from Zaporizhzhia. And there was a counteroffensive launched. I would call it rather an offense, not a counteroffense, onto the lines of the Russians, and they have had some success. They gained it's like 200,000 square kilometers of ground. Yes, I know the pro-Russian punters are saying it's all empty space, but no, the Russians have to reconquer that open space again. Will they be able to do it? Yes, they will be able to do it. There's no doubt about that. But the question, or then they always talk about that the Ukrainians are launching these attacks with no successes in the Kherson region, but that's also wrong. They did conquer some ground, and they did. The Russians did retreat, and in my opinion, a retreat is a defeat. It is a limited defeat on the battlefield, not on the war. The one has to make that distinction. And what has currently, well, I will get to it now. So what the Russians have realized basically is that they have too little troops committed to the conflict. The Ukrainian army has expanded the military personnel up from about 200,000, which was the initial number, up to, according to Zelensky, 700,000. Whether that is true, I'm not totally sure, because what can you really believe what the Ukrainians are saying? But in any case, on the realization and the successes of the Ukrainian advances, Vladimir Putin then issued a partial mobilization, and 300,000 reservists were called up. Yes, we can all acknowledge it was a little bit chaotic. People were called up that shouldn't have been called up. Some of the regions, because each region had to supply a certain amount of troops or reservists, and the paperwork wasn't in order, and the officials were, well, it's probably still living in the Soviet Union time when they were very bombastic and forced some people into the conscription of the call-up procedure or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it. And yes, even some of these people untrained and inexperienced have already been killed on the front, which is very sad. But these are all errors that have been incurred. It isn't a major issue. It is not a failure of the call-up in a great sense, but more than 200,000 people, reservists, have been already being called up, and they are being prepared, and they will soon move to the front. Some of them have already moved to the front. So I believe all these problems are isolated incidents, and this is normal for any military in the world. There was actually a video made by Brian Beriletic, who said that, well, he was a Marine about 20 years back, and he said he even experienced the same chaotic behavior when he joined the American military. And he also indicated that he had to buy some of the equipment himself. Now, I was a conscript in the South African Army, and we were supplied everything. Maybe not always the best, but we were supplied what a soldier needed. If you wanted the luxury stuff, then, well, naturally you have to buy it yourself. Today, a flak jacket is standard equipment, a helmet, a rifle, boots, uniform, eating utensils, water bottles, backpacks, sleeping bags, and all the stuff is standard equipment. So unless you want to be like the Americans that sort of have like not a vacation, but have all the luxuries, that's not going to happen in Russia. Then also the four, now it was 2 republics and 2 oblasts were incorporated into Russia, and they are now Russian soil, and they are now covered by Russian legislation and defense capability. And if you attack now those regions, then you are attacking Russia directly. Vladimir Putin did initialize some new laws. It did continue, while there was martial law in those 2 republics and 2 oblasts, let's call it the 4 oblasts, just to make it easy. And he just put in the legislation that this martial law will continue. So there's nothing funny about that. Then he also created a new coordinating council. Also nothing funny. I believe that this council has to manage all the problems that were noticed and experienced during the call-up of the reservists. That's one of the functions, I believe. Also, where there's shortage of military equipment, they will sort that out. They will also be responsible probably for the build-up and the reconstructions in the 4 oblasts that are now part of Russia. They will also have to ensure the restocking of all the ammunition that was expended in the war. And then the most important thing is that Putin now appointed a single general that would oversee the whole military action in Ukraine, which was totally logical, because it is now not a supportive action, military operation to the Donbas militia, but it's now a standalone Russian operation. And the Donbas militias and Kherson and the Zaporizhzhia people are now being part of the Russian military force. It would have been for me totally logical in any case. Well, the build-up is still going on. There were some troops and equipment moved to Belarus on the request of Lukashenko. It seems to me that Ukraine has amassed some troops on the Belarus-Ukrainian border, and he fear, and also a NATO exercise in Poland, and that made Lukashenko a little bit cautious, and then he also requested support from Russia, and apparently, well, the numbers are, the one guy says so much, the one article says so much, so I initially thought it's going to be only 1,000 Russian soldiers, but some other guys are mentioning 9,000 Russian soldiers. And I think about 250 tanks were sent and 170 artillery pieces, which were all mobile, self-propelled artillery pieces, and then a lot of trucks in those trains. I'm not sure if you saw all the footage, but it is quite a lot. The Ukrainians are still trying to penetrate the Russians' defensive positions. I know they are being blamed by the pro-Russian punters that all these attacks are futile and men are losing their lives for nothing and so on, and they are experiencing huge losses. Well, in my previous videos I talked about it. What does it mean to have significant losses? And that's a relative concept. In an army of 700,000 men, if I lose 200 men a day, and that's nothing. Brian Benedettic always likes to refer to the Second World War and the Ardennes offensive. And in that offensive of, I think, 5 or 6 weeks, there were 150,000 Germans dead and 140 Allied forces dead. Now, that's a big number. Now, then you can say significant losses, but 200, 300 a day is not that much. The Ukrainian army has to do something, whether they would like to do it or not. It is a war scenario. They do have to attack. Or they can wait in their barracks and wait for the Russians to identify their positions and then take them out and destroy them by precision missiles and aviation, which is stupid. Also, again, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, daily reports, they always destroy so many tanks and so many fighting vehicles and so many, and every second day there's another aircraft being shot down. Well, according to the numbers that are being presented, Ukraine should have had nothing left. So the numbers indicate that Ukraine had double the amount of aircraft than was initially mentioned in any report. Also the amount of tanks. I mean, tanks are still being used to attack the Russian front lines. Tanks are still being destroyed. And if you see the next day, there's more some tanks and fighting weapons. And these are all not Western weapons. Maybe the few from Poland and Slovenia and maybe so, but that's not that. The question is always, are the Ukrainian forces really that much destroyed as these being said by the pro-Russian punters? Unfortunately, initially I thought so. Now I have my doubt. And I take the numbers being specified in these daily reports of the Ministry of Defense with a huge pinch of salt. The Ukrainians are still coming. They still have weapons. They still have artillery. They still have the HIMARS. Yes, the HIMARS is overrated, but I will tackle that subject when I do again a video on the artillery, the weapons used in Ukraine, and with a focus on artillery and rocket systems. And then I will discuss on why I believe the HIMARS are still functioning, if you want to put it like that. So that's about, the winter is coming. The people are talking about the rainy season. They say the front lines have stabilized. The Russians have entered Bakhmut. The pro-Russian punters always say, yes, it is a Wagner group, but if you go and look at how many soldiers the Wagner group have, they have about 5,000 members, and those units are active all over the world. So how many can they have in Europe and in Ukraine itself? Maybe 1,000 troops, maybe 1,500 troops. But they can't have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10,000 men under their command. So I can't agree with some of the pro-Russian punters as well. So we're all waiting for now for the winter to come and for the soil to freeze and for the preparation of the Russian army to conclude. And hopefully the Ukrainians cannot penetrate the Russians' defense. Hopefully the Russians will now not retreat from Kherson area. They are evacuating the people from Kherson city in order to protect them against artillery strikes and missile strikes from the Ukrainians and prevent innocent civilians' death. And I can understand that. But hopefully they won't retreat, because if they are going to retreat, that would be a serious consequences. Will the Russians continue with the military offense in the winter? Yes, I believe so fully. They are capable of fighting in snowy conditions. It's not something that they are not accustomed to. They probably have trained for that. It's going to be cold. It's going to be horrible. But they will continue, because if they don't, then more Western arms will flow into Ukraine. The Ukrainian army can regroup and re-strategize and replan, and that would be a bad thing from a military point of view. How far will the Russians go? What will they try to achieve? Well, Zelensky is refusing to do any negotiations. He's still told by his handlers, the Americans and Britons and the West, not to negotiate. He has elected to do that, so there's not going to be no peace agreement. So what does it leave Putin? What does it leave Putin to do? Well, the only thing he can really do is to progress and occupy more of Ukrainian territory. And most logical parts would be Mykolaiv and Odessa. And if you don't know about that during shortly after the Maidan coup, there were about, I think, 23 or more people that were killed or burned alive by the Nazi groupings in Odessa. And I've also read an articles of that Odessa is fairly well pro-Russian, and that there's an underground pro-Russian movement in Odessa. So it would be logical for the Russians to progress until Odessa. It will also basically provide then a bridge to Transnistria. And if you have, I saw on a Telegram message that the Moldova government is now talking a Western narrative. They're not talking about peace anymore. They are now pro-Ukrainian. They are now totally in subversive attitude towards the West. And I wouldn't be surprised if they start military action against Transnistria, which naturally would be a big mistake. But then we don't always know how people think. You know, the old Soviet or countries, also PAC countries, have built up a certain hatred against Russia. So one can understand their attitude. So I believe that Russia will progress on up till to Odessa, and then finally meet up with Transnistria, and that will basically isolate or landlock Ukraine. And then slowly they might go to the north and then finally reconquer Kharkov and those regions. I believe they will then, at the end of the day, go up to a certain point and then not attack Kiev. I see no reason for that. But they will either eliminate Zelensky at the end, because there's nothing else they can do. They have to take out a lot of the right-wing Nazi commanders in Kiev. So that is also a necessity. But it won't happen now. It will probably take another 6 months to maybe a year. Depends on how aggressive Putin really wants to be. He is very restrained in his approach in this war. There was the question issued why did Putin now decide to destroy the electrical infrastructure and the water infrastructure to the western parts of Ukraine? Why didn't he do it at the beginning of the SMO? Well, as I've explained before, those are two different types of operation. The initial SMO was in order to support the two republics militarily. The Russians were not in command, they were in a supportive role. But with the incorporation of the four oblasts now into Russia, the whole military situation has changed. They are now actually on a war footing, but they don't really call it like that. They still like to call it SMO, and that is for specific reasons, like legal reasons. Because if they have to declare war, then the whole political structure and economic structure and legal basis in Russia has to change. And I don't think that Putin would like to do that. The attack, the latest attack for cruise missiles and so on in the Kiev area was basically prompted by the advance of Ukrainian forces, the sabotage of the Kerch Bridge, the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines, and the lack of soldiers on the front in order to defend the whole 1,000+ kilometer front line. So everything has changed now. Putin still has, according to a speech, he said that there were about 29 targets that they wanted to destroy. 20 were destroyed, so there were 9 left, and that's why there were some more cruise missile UAV attacks on certain parts of Ukraine, in Kiev. They are also sending more UAVs, suicide drones, to target these assets. Well, it makes a lot of sense. Firstly, they are a lot cheaper. A 4 of a 16 kilogram explosive device is still a lot of explosives. It can destroy a certain power distribution center or anything that's fairly small enough. And so they are efficient or effective in terms of their payload. So you can send them in numbers, so you can basically overrun the defense system, the air defense system of Kiev. And also because of their noise, they can sort of imitate the population. And well, that's just a side effect. I don't think that's its purpose. And also then you can save the more expensive cruise missiles for more high-value targets, or if NATO or the West decides to enter the conflict. You have to have something in the reserve. So that's about the military aspects of Russia-Ukraine. Then on the political side, we have the political turmoil in Europe. My favorite person, sarcastic, Liz Truss, has resigned after 45 days. As said that she would be a disaster, and she was a disaster. But then on the Conservative Party also voted for her, so what else did they expect? I know there were some videos made by Alexander Mercouris and Duran, which were, like, in my opinion, fairly fictional and contradictory from one video to another. In terms of I would say the deep state, or the political elite, as you like to call it, and that they wanted to, but I'm not going to go into that. Basically, we all know that the elections in America was a joke and a circus, with the election of Joe Biden and even Trump. And at that stage, I thought that America has become a circus. Well, Britain has now joined that circus. The political establishment or the political system in Britain has now also become a circus. In fact, in yesterday's video of the Duran, they were even speculating that Boris Johnson will come back and be the new Prime Minister. Now, I'm not sure how you're gonna support that decision or substantiate. No, that's that's the wrong word. But in any case, support that appointment, since he was actually asked to leave and fired because he was lazy and lying and all this other stuff that goes with it. So if they elect him again, then that would be a second disaster shortly after Liz Truss. Then we have the new leadership in Italy, Giorgia Meloni, who is apparently now a far-right party. And initially I thought, is she the one that's going to destroy the EU? Because what I initially understand is that she was anti-EU. And although she was pro-Ukrainian, she had an agreement with Berlusconi. You're going to excuse my names. I can't remember names. It's one of the lacking stuff I have. In any case. Berlusconi. Yeah, but in any case. He is supposed to be a big friend of Putin, and there were some discussions, and those audio recordings of the discussions were leaked. And it would have been a very embarrassing situation for Meloni. But apparently she has now become Prime Minister of Italy, and she now has to establish a party, and she's talking about unity in a what do you call it? When three parties join, when they have an agreement, come on. Coalition. Yes, if they have a coalition. After first threatening that she will not allow anything against NATO or against Ukraine. She's pro-Ukraine, pro-NATO, or EU. Any case. So it seems to me she has reversed her view. And she's probably at the end of the day going to play ball. Same as Greece finally did after all their threats. So now I have to ask myself, what is going to change in Italy? And I don't think much. It's going to be the same old, same old, same old. And Berlusconi was, hey, what's his name? Yeah. He was even threatened by some German MPs that he should be fired or expelled from the European Party because he was a Putin friend. And I don't know what if these people even try to still produce or say or that Europe is still a democratic society. I don't know. In any case, according to a video of Duran, the Germans have been informed, or the Germans know who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. I cannot find any evidence to that. All I can find is that the Swedish and the Danish and the German are still investigating it. They are still jointly investigating the Sabotage Act. But Sweden has decided not to divulge all information, since for national security purposes. For whatever that means. But what they all three have acknowledged now in the media is that it was a sabotage act. Who are brilliant people. I mean, I could have said it to you even without looking at the stuff. But they have reviewed some videos, and you can see the damage. Whether they will find out who done it, they might. Will we ever know? I don't think so. In the meantime, the inflation goes up and up and up and up and up in Europe. Today I saw an article that the producers index in Germany has increased by 50% year on year. That means the price increase of the product, that means the cost of the product of production has increased by 50%. So I don't see that you can have an inflation of 10% if the cost of the product goes up by 50%. And that's all due to the high energy cost. And everybody is still talking about gas. And gas is the reason why everything is so expensive. Shortage of gas. But then if you read further on, then you find out that number one is that all the reservoirs are full up to 90%. And they have met their target. And then there was a report by RT News that they did an investigation and they found out, okay, the biggest storage facilities are in France, Netherlands, Germany, and Italy. But all these storage facilities belong to private companies, and the government only controls 10% of the reserves. And it was said then that these companies can sell their gas at any price that they're elected to. Well, there was no price cap agreed upon by the EU members, so that's still true. Companies can sell their gas at any price. But they're again missing the point. I did a video on the gas issues in Germany. Of all the electricity being generated in Germany, I will just use that as an example, only 14% is produced by gas. 30% is being produced by coal and coal derivatives. 6% is done by nuclear, but they're going to shut it down. But now they have decided to extend the life for a couple of months of the nuclear facility in Germany. And then 46% is produced by renewable energy. So as you can see, only 14% is produced by gas. Then if you look at the heating profile, homes being heated by gas, that is only 36%, I believe, 36 or 38%. Which still means that more than 60% is heated by either oil or electricity or some other wood, coal, whatever other forms of energy. So the question is, yes, shortage of gas is a big problem. Why? Because certain industries are dependent on gas because their heat source is gas. That if you want to fire up I would say a metal furnace that melts the metal, some furnaces are used for gas. You have to change it now to some other form. They can't do it. Yes, the fertilizer used the raw gas not only as an energy source, but also as a chemical source, or the base chemical. And yes, glass is actually also heated by gas, more efficient than electricity. So the glass industry has a problem. Yes, those companies will suffer if there's a shortage. But I'm sure the government can make some rules and exceptions for these type of companies if they really wanted it. But again, they don't want to do it. The way that I understand is that gas, electricity pricing is determined by the highest input cost. And at this stage, the highest input cost is the price of gas, which apparently has increased by more than 250%. So the other electricity generators, companies, are making huge profits. And that is the core of the problem. So instead of revisiting the contracts of these between the government and electricity generators, they would like to put some form of price cap of gas in delivery, which is not going to work because there is a shortage of gas. That's a demand, yeah? Supply and demand economics. That's a demand crunch. So they can't put it on a price cap. So what are they doing? They are trying to subsidize the population by giving them a certain amount of money. And hopefully that will alleviate the problem, but it's only 300 euros, so it's not a lot. So it's not going to cover all the stuff, and doesn't also cover the industry. So what the German German government decided, or not decided, they are mulling the decision, is to have a windfall tax on the German industry. Which means that all non-gas electricity producers will be capped at the 10% profit margin, and the rest will all be taxed. And then German will take that tax and then finance or support subsidies to people and other companies. No, that was one saying. And apparently Germany has budgeted 200 billion euros for that. And when Germany decided to do that, then the French and the Euro Parliament was highly unhappy with. How can Germany make such a decision unilaterally without informing their partners in the EU? Well, I don't see why Germany would even consider talking to Macron on what their plans are for their own country. The whole gas story has become so disruptive to the unity of the EU. It's a question of nobody wants to share gas. They all want to hoard it for themselves. And if they do share it, then they want to sell it at huge profit margins. And then they have to share electricity. And Ukraine was even exporting electricity to Europe, but that has now been stopped because apparently 30% of the generating capacity in Ukraine has been damaged or destroyed. So, so the next circle is going to be Europe as a unit. And then I watched a video of George Galloway, if I get his name right. And he actually, in his introduction, he said that the British people are probably, it has now probably changed because Jeremy Hunt has revised all the mini budget of Liz Truss. So I'm not totally sure it's still valid, but it's going to, apparently there is some subsidy that's going to be done until April next year for energy, and it is going to cap the energy supply at £2,500 a year or something like that. But however, George said that the mini budget was again a subsidy in order to control the energy prices, but the subsidy is not going to be distributed to the population. It's going to be used and given to the private companies. And you can sort of, it's very analog to a bailout of these energy companies in a similar manner that in the 2008 financial crash, the Reserve Bank of America and Europe actually recapitalized the banks and subsidized the banks instead of giving the money to the population, hoping that the banks would basically lend the money to the industry, which they didn't do. They invested on the stock exchange and chased up the share prices. And while there were no enforcement rules by the Reserve Bank in order to force them, but you have to use it for this purpose. And they just gave it for them for no strings attached. So what do we have? We have winter that's coming. Gas storages are full. Are they going to be enough? Maybe, because nobody knows how severe the winter is going to be. Will it lead to deindustrialization of Europe? Yes, I believe partial, but it's not only Germany, it's going to be Italy as well. I believe more there will be a financial crash. There will be something else that will trigger it. Because Italian banks are not in a good shape. Deutsche Bank is not in a good shape. America is not going to be in a good shape. Yes, the dollar is strong at this stage, but that's only, in my opinion, a temporary phenomenon. Inflation is still rising. The reserve banks are not aggressive enough for raising interest rates in order to curb inflation. Inflation is not only driven by the sanctions against Russia, although they make it a lot worse than it should have been, could have been. I don't believe that the West is going to go back on their sanctions and realize their folly. They will, in my opinion, double down. Russia will do its military operation in Ukraine. Ukraine will be destroyed. Huge parts will become part of Russia. The west of Ukraine, I don't know whether it's going to be part of Poland or Bulgaria or not, whether they will annex it themselves. Zelensky and his far-right Nazi nationalist buddies will disappear one way or the other, and then the war will stop. And then the world, maybe the West will abandon then Ukraine, or maybe even sooner, and then start some action in Taiwan again, and see if they can make some money out of that. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money, one way or the other. But unfortunately, the time is up. The time is up for suppressing the world. The time is up for the dollar. The time is up for... The end of the road basically has been reached. You cannot kick the can down any further. Maybe for another short period, but that's it. Well, that is more or less a summary of how I see it currently. Things might change. I might be totally wrong. There are so many variants, like I always say, the world is a complex entity. You never know what the Americans are going to do, who they're going to sacrifice. Trust will never trust an American. And it's actually, I'm actually disappointed in that sense in Putin, that he still trusts that Americans will keep their word and their agreements, and especially when you look at the grain deal. Nothing has happened there. So when is Putin going to realize that the word of the West means nothing? It has no value. In the same way that the monetary system has no value. Okay, I hope you like what you heard. If you want to subscribe to the channel, please do. Share the channel. Let's see that we can get some more members. And until next time, cheers.